Hi everyone, welcome to Brick and Block, and I have a fantastic guest for you today, Katie Le Chevalier. Welcome.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you on board. We obviously work with you in the office on a number of projects, and you actually supply and look after us in the office as well with your lovely plants. But for those who aren't aware of yourself, would you mind doing a little intro?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Katie, and I'm the business development manager at Planteria. But what we do is everything planting. So different strokes for different folks on really big projects. So, for example, we've just been working on Deutsche Bank and on some other large banking projects as well, sort of Barclays. We would maybe be brought in very early stages. So sort of thinking about REBA stage 3 even or 4 at the beginning of a project to provide biophilic consultancy. And then for a smaller retrofit type company, we might be brought in on the design stage from as early as the sort of concept mood boards, working with an interior design team, and then right the way through to installing that planting, talking about all kinds of planting as well. So it could be green walls, high level planting, joinery planting, interior and exterior sort of roof terrace type planting. And then through that project management of the installation, and the most important bit, which some people kind of forget about sometimes, which is the aftercare. So clients might be with us for 3 years, typically 3 years as a minimum, but quite often for a lot longer. So we've got clients who we've had for more than 20 years. And the sustainability piece is obviously making that planting last, stay healthy, look great for the long term.
And do you think, I mean, you've obviously been at Planteria for a while now, I think over a decade.
Yeah.
How have you, I mean, I guess firstly, how is your journey into getting into Planteria? And secondly, how have you seen it change over the last sort of decade?
Yeah, so for me, when I came into Planteria, it was new to me, the world of planting. So I'd come from a commercial, a sort of, corporate background in the city for many years, working in financial services, and in insurance for the sort of latter part of that. So I suppose where I'd come, where my the kind of connection came from there is having worked in a variety of very lovely workplaces. So the last company I was at, Swiss Re, I was in the Gherkin when that was just sort of newly opened up. So that experience of what corporate space could be like, should be like, working in the C-suite, how was that different to elsewhere, and what kind of offerings were there at that point, and then the transition into a planting company selling into those kind of businesses. So it's sort of seen both sides of it. I've been here for just over 11 years now, and it's changed massively. So when I first joined, we've actually tripled in size from when I first joined to now.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
So we're currently at about 120 people within Planteria and servicing, thousands of clients. And really going from working just with the end user to going much, much earlier on in a project, working with architects and designers. So that's changed. And the other thing that has really changed is the size and scale of planting and how that's perceived. So it started off when Planteria was founded, way before my time, back in 1977.
A long time ago.
1977. We were founded by two brothers, and at that point, our planting in offices was really literally a few potted plants in perhaps the reception area or in the boardroom. And now, I think really driven along by changes in the workplace design world by architects and by interior designers, it's just been taken to a whole new level. So you've got eye level planting and walls of planting, moss walls, palisade planting. it's gone so far beyond a pot in the corner. Although we obviously do still do floor standing planting in pots, that's just the smallest piece of it. And actually, you know, kudos to your whole sector for really pushing that along. I think the other thing that's had a big part to play in that is frameworks like LEAD and WELL that have, you know, really made people reassess what the workplace is and what they want from it, and brought to light well-being, and actually, you know, helping clients to get really good return on investment for the office design to support the people within that organization.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that, actually, because so I mean, I started working at Mark Sellers in 2014, so not too far away after my master's. And I would probably say sort of, you know, we've obviously historically done offices and workplace. And you are right. I would say sort of around that period of time, it was very much about potted plants. Maybe you'd get like, got a really lovely double height reception. You might get some larger sort of semi-tree, you know, big bushes or whatever you want to call them. But I don't think we necessarily took it on board about wellness.
Yeah.
I don't think we took it on board in terms of, oh, let's put a really lovely green wall here because that would be really nice. I don't think it really was part of the fray per se. Briam definitely was part of it, but I do feel that well was a big section of it, because 2016 we did a project for the Crown Estate, which was 1 Eden Street, and that was their first flagship co-working scheme, and the WELL accreditation was just arrived in the UK, and they challenged us to utilize that accreditation. They were doing their own HQ offices at the same time, and they were using WELL as well. And that's how we got introduced at our gazetters into WELL. And it was a bit of an eye-opener for me, actually. I had learned about it, and, you know, I can't remember how many sections there are now, but I think at the time it was like 7 or 8, and now I think there's probably a few more sort of categories, whether it's, you know, air, water,
there are
and
10
features
features now.
And 10 features now. So I think that had a massive effect on thinking about the interior design and thinking about introducing all of those things. I mean, even like, you know, how far away are you from a water fountain, you know, to get some water? All of these things you wouldn't necessarily think about, but they were, you know, that has really sort of changed it, didn't it?
It has. And I took the WELL AP qualification earlier this year, qualified in April.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I really enjoyed the process, and it has changed the way I think about workplace design. It definitely, I think what it gives you is that understanding, a much more holistic understanding, and a greater appreciation for everyone else's piece of work. So, you know, obviously I'm a champion for biophilia, and I love the planting, but I can really now look at a space and think, wow, that's really been carefully designed to enhance the well-being of those people. Like, I can really appreciate the thought that's gone into the lighting, the ambient heat, you know, the heating, and having great ergonomics, sit-stand desks, offices that really offer people the opportunity to work in a quiet space or collaborate. That you can see where the thought has gone into it, and the companies that involve all of their staff in the pre-plan stages, you know, the project management, if they've got a proper working group, a steering committee to make that workspace work for the staff and to really engage them early doors, they'll have a much greater success, and a greater success in the actual sort of acceptance and happiness scale, if you like. The what's the word I'm looking for? The post-occupancy satisfaction survey is going to be a big hit if they've got there first and found out what people need and what's going to work and what isn't going to work, and then they've really thoughtfully tried to pull in some of those at least. I mean, I know you're never going to be able to please everybody, but thinking about people ahead of time and not just kind of thinking about what a few of the people on the senior leadership team wanted.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point. I remember you saying earlier on that you were in the Gherkin
Yeah,
many moons ago. How do you, just from your experience of being in, obviously it's a lovely building, lovely space. I know a couple of people are in there at the moment. And how would you say office design was then? Compare it, if you compare it from then to now, do you think it's vastly changed? Do you think there
I
was
do.
perhaps more importance with, say, the C-suite and reception,
Yeah,
front of house, and less so for the,
yeah,
you know,
I do. I
the work
think
areas?
those were the days. So when I was in there, those were the days when everyone worked in the office. There was
Yeah,
no working from home. I can
no,
remember. I mean, this was before I had children as well. So I fully admit that my head has changed and my whole attitude has changed to work since I've got my children are nearly grown up now. I've got an 18-year-old and a
yeah,
15-year-old. So, and we've had COVID. So a lot's happened.
no,
But I can
absolutely.
remember that my colleagues and I used to roll our eyes when somebody was working from home. We were like,
Yeah,
mm,
I did the same.
WFH are they? Like, But
Yeah,
the whole attitude was everyone was in. And I think as
yeah,
well, those were the days where workspace was very unpersonal. There was no personalization. It was very grey. It was beautiful. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a beautifully designed office, but
yeah.
it didn't have very much personality. And there was certainly no space for that different working styles. It was very much one working style. And yes, we had great places to eat and amazing staff, restaurant, all the rest of that stuff, which was great. But I think leaps and bounds now when you go to offices and also, it's much more mainstream that's the case.
Mm.
It's not just a big blue chip, but actually I think you'll find that most organizations that are really proactive and thinking about their workspace are getting so much better at designing workspace that works for their people.
I definitely agree. I think if you want to talk about equality in some sense,
Mm,
the office design, I think we have now given importance to all areas of the office design, whether it's back of house space, whether it's front of house, whether it is for your leadership team or whether it's for the general employee team. I think there's now an equality in the design. Obviously, I think that's also reflected in how office design has changed. Whilst you may have a C-suite, the old traditional C-suite is now, those leadership individuals are now as part of the general workforce. They're sitting amongst us rather than having a traditional sort of 90s, early noughties sort of like room to themselves. I mean, it still happens in some
yeah,
areas, but I think the evolution of office design has also moved it along where I think the design of offices has become a little bit more horizontal,
yeah.
that it's not so much of
I
hierarchical anymore.
agree.
And I think that changes, doesn't it?
It
Because
does.
you can then spread out biophilia and good design
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah, and we're actually currently undergoing our own major refurbishment and office design here at Planteria. So we're right in the
Yeah.
middle of all of that, and it's really exciting. And that is what we're going for as well. That much more open plan office, everybody together, and also completely hot desking, not having set spaces, but being able to book your desk and work in different environments and work with different teams to really integrate people and to learn from each other. And it's
Mm.
very exciting.
It's always nice when you do it. We moved offices a few years ago, and weirdly through COVID, we had grown. We were one of those companies that did the opposite of quite a lot of other people. And we grew, and it meant that we needed new office premises. So we moved a stone's throw away on Hedgen Street. It was an opportunity for us to sort of show to our partners, to our clients, to the people we work with, a sort of a bit more of us.
Mm.
And that was the first time I think that we sort of really pushed the boat out on wellness, on good materials and challenging all of those
And are you
things.
reaping the benefits from it?
Yeah, we are. I mean, I think it makes a massive difference when not only we enjoy working there, it's also really lovely when, we have guests. I mean, at a B2B yesterday, and we invited a client into the office, and they were like, "Wow, this is great," and they love the fact that the plants, great plants, of course, are everywhere, and there's great light that's coming through, and it's all of those things that I think BREEAM has always been great from a sustainability sort of building perspective, but I think Well has really driven that a little bit further
I
in terms of
agree.
thinking about people.
Yeah.
And I think that's really nice to sort of see it becoming a little bit more mainstream and challenging us. And I think developers are understanding that a bit better,
Yeah.
because it's not just, okay, let's do a nice office design. It's actually, what are you doing after you've finished? Is your, facilities management team catered for properly? And I think, again, we're seeing over the last couple of years, especially post-COVID, an importance to those hidden workforce that you don't necessarily see, but are extremely vital to, the well-being of the building and to the employees as well. And I think that's great to see. We're just working on a project down in London Bridge at the moment, and refreshingly, the client said, let's bring the FM team out of the basement and up onto the ground floor. And that was really lovely to see. The changing rooms and everything are still down in the amenity section in the basement, but that's really lovely to sort of see a shift in the trend.
Yeah.
And that's really good. One thing I wanted to sort of touch on, you mentioned earlier on about the fact of thinking about light and temperature, and something that certainly I have been a bit of a journey on is thinking about light and temperature in relation to plants, because that's something that I certainly didn't realize. For example, with green walls, especially if you're going to put them indoors, they're fantastic, but they do need a bit of a helping hand. Things like that. Do you think that there are things that necessarily that not only designers, but also clients don't necessarily think about so often?
Yes, definitely. And I think in terms of lighting, I think it can actually make architects and design teams nervous. I think, where to even consider putting planting in. I have had these discussions where people say, lighting levels, or, can we have plants? Is it something
Yeah.
and then they almost want to back away from it because they're worried. But if you're considering lighting levels and you're following guidelines for lighting levels for the occupants of the building, you can definitely include lighting. So most of the interior planting that we use will have been from species which are commonly found in rainforests. So actually, in a rainforest, the planting that's close to the floor in a rainforest will be used to surviving in quite low level lighting. So there's always going to be options to put planting in without the consideration of having to worry too much about increasing your lighting. Now, you're talking about green walls. You may well have to get some grow lights in on those. Depending on where the light's coming from and where it's hitting the planting, and how you want, what kind of planting you've got in that wall and how lush you want it to be. You may do. But in terms of like generally including lighting in joinery planting, it can be done. And then, measurements can be taken and the right kind of lighting specified for that. So I think what we want to do as a company is to be able to help early on to give that advice and to reassure people. And where there might be a question mark over a sort of slightly shadier area of a building, we obviously take into consideration where are the windows, or if there are windows, and what direction are they facing, to be able to guide and give a palette, really like an advice of a palette of planting, which would be optimal for that.
I think where we've worked clients like the Crown Estates, the Grosvenors, I think they have a little bit more awareness of this. I mean, they've got usually sort of champions who push this forward. They do have green policies that they want, the biophilics or policies that they want everyone that they work with to introduce. But I do find that sometimes not every developer is as au fait as some others.
Yeah, sure.
And sometimes you do need to educate them.
Exactly.
And do you think that education piece is a big thing as well?
Really big, yeah. So part of my role is to deliver CPD. And the first CPD that I put together to deliver was about biophilic design. Like, what is it? Because when people hear biophilia, it means different things to different people. And actually to educate in the science behind biophilia, why as humans, we crave that connection, and it's good for us, for our mental well-being, for our physical health. It's, it's a really important thing, and why it is. And then to really talk about those big projects and what we can do, what the options are, and what our role is. So when you were talking about that sort of the biophilic guidelines, really. So like you were saying, that an organization that rolls out a large portfolio property, or perhaps they've got a big portfolio of offices, and they want to have that brand identity. They want to include biophilia, but at the same time, they want to be able to give that framework guideline to their own team. We can help design that for them, something that will work in all the spaces, obviously with parameters around it that there might need to be tweaks and changes depending on certain factors, but it still allows them to be confident of what they're specifying or what they're trying to achieve in each space.
Do you think clients are becoming a little bit more, because one of the big things that we always get, like, whether it's a green wall, green walls is sort of the main talking point sometimes, where we go, oh, let's put a lovely green wall here. They go, yeah, I'm not really sure about the maintenance of that. I mean, we obviously go, it's fine, it's fairly straightforward. But do you think that, say, over the last couple of years, that people that you're working with are becoming a little bit more au fait with being a bit more comfortable with it?
I hope so. I think it's a work in progress. And I think, we have a green wall expert in our team. It is a specialist item. It is one of those things that every case is going to be different. I don't think there is a blanket answer. And I'm just working currently on a green walls CPD because for this very reason, because I think it is something that it's easy to sort of have a one size fits all solution, but that is not really, it's not best in the long term. You do need to understand the pros and cons, understand the different options, have somebody that can give you all of that information, because of course, when you're working with design teams, they tend to want that there and then because they're about to go into a meeting with a client. So, and it's not something that buyer beware. You do need to be armed with all the information and all the options so that you get a really great long-term, long-lasting result.
Yeah. And I'm certainly, what I'm finding is that when you, especially in this, probably the last sort of 2 years or so, when neighbours has been starting to come into the fray, and you're thinking about operational energy as well as operational carbon, that, even the equipment that we need to automate the irrigation for the green wall, that also adds to the operational energy that needs to be used. Right?
It does. But I think as well that you do need to, it'll be a case that you need to weigh up what are you trying to achieve in a space. I think that's your key starting point. So I think green walls are beautiful, and bang for your buck. If you've got a huge, great, big, beautifully looked after, well-maintained, stunning green wall, that has so much impact, actually, maybe in your entrance or in a key area of your building, it's really worth that investment. It's like a piece of artwork that changes or can change with the seasons. If you're trying to achieve something that's going to uplift people and create that visual impact from all different areas of a space, that could be really good return on investment for what you decide to spend on that space. There are also walls that we do that will clean air. So that's quite a new product. And again, if you're talking about small spaces where you've got quite an airless feel, or you've got a lot of energy in that room with a lot of people, and you're really looking for something that's going to, maybe a boardroom where that's quite heavily occupied. Again, that could be a really great option if you want to keep the oxygen levels high, keep people functioning, keep them cognitively on their game. That could be, again, a really good investment for that space.
Yeah. Will you also, I mean, obviously when you work with plenty of architects, will you sort of go in and, we as designers will have an idea of where they could go, but will you also work with them and clients to go, actually, we also suggest exactly what you said, why don't you think about it in the boardrooms? Will you do that sort of assessment as
Yes,
well?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's giving yourself enough time. The biggest area where we can bring the most impact, I would say, is early engagement. The
Yeah.
earlier and it can be an ongoing thing. I think project teams don't want to get planting companies involved too soon because they think, well, it's down here, it's like, I don't know, stage 6 or stage 5 or, whatever it is where they're
Yeah.
thinking about where you're going to be really needed. But actually, the earlier that you can do it, if you're talking to us at stage 3 or stage 4, you might only need an hour of our time at
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
point. But there, we can help guide and steer and suggest at the right moments to then be able to be brought and also to advise on timelines. The earlier we
Uh,
know what's PC and working backwards and saying, right, if you've maybe considering green walls, so let's at stage 3 or stage 4 have the discussions about options and costs and likely locations, and then you can decide again at what stage we next need to talk
yeah.
about what decisions have been made and what do we need to order and do we need to plan an installation team, or do you need more information on load bearing, or whatever it might be. But if we don't know about it until it's at that final stage where you have to just make decisions and buy things,
Yeah, no,
then
yeah.
the wrong thing could be bought.
Yeah, no, I think all of those are extremely valid. I mean, exactly what you said. If it's a green wall, we've had it on a few projects where each green wall has been completely different. We've had to put a substructure in behind it. Sometimes it has been okay to just,
Mm.
stick the rails onto it, or sometimes we've had to build an entire metal frame in front of something else because we couldn't touch it. So it's an
Yeah,
independent wall system. And I think those are things that you do need to be picking up at stage 3,
yeah,
in that sort of developed design period, even before you even get to stage 4 technical design.
yeah,
We need your input to sort of think about that. And it does feed into costs as well, because we often have conversations with the facilities team of the clients where they go, well, how much is this going to cost afterwards to maintain? Is that going on the service charge? Are they going to take it as a general capital
yeah,
cost? What are they going? And it's all of those sort of wider
yeah.
conversations. Um, One of the other things I was going to ask was, have you found that there's been better engagement with sort of public health engineers as well on that side of the fence, where they've had to grow their awareness of the requirements of, say, how much water green walls need, or whether you link those to rainwater
Yeah, I
harvesting
haven't
and
come
anything
across that
else?
really.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, I guess it's likely to as time goes by.
it will grow. It
I
will
I would
grow.
say, yeah, but
Yeah.
no, that hasn't been something that we've experienced to
Yeah,
date.
because I think that's an area to grow as well. I mean, we've obviously architecturally, I think in the industry, I think we've all been on a journey to
Mm,
learn about how to incorporate these elements into a building, whether it's external or internal. And you're right. If you're engaged, then you can have exactly what you said, a half an hour workshop with the design team, and everyone gets the information they need. Which is really important, I think, to make sure that you know that the system's going to work, how everything's going to work before you even get to stage 6. And you're like, oh my god, I've handed over the building and it's not it's not all there. But yeah, no, that's I think some really interesting points to bear in mind when you go through the process. Um, Another thing that I wanted to really chat to you about, which we were talking off air, was it's really interesting when you were telling me about the sort of the hidden things that necessarily that I wouldn't know about Planteria as a company, because you've been making massive efforts behind the scenes with logistics and waste. I
yeah,
was wondering if you could sort of touch base on that.
yeah, absolutely. I suppose one of the things that we talked about was just really how much we've grown
Yeah.
in the past. Well, since I've been here, I mean, since the inception of Planteria in 1977, we've had massive growth. But in the last 10 years, we've literally tripled in size. And with that, when you're a smaller company and you've got many people doing lots of things, because you're the everything, if you like, there's one person doing half a dozen different jobs, to now to where we've got very specific teams doing very specific things, and it's allowed us to take that step back and to really take our sustainability journey seriously. And we've looked at lots of different areas. And the first thing we did was actually engage a sustainability consultant to challenge us to say, this is what as a good sustainability strategy looks like. All of these pillars, based on the UN goals, and these where are you now, and what do you have the appetite to achieve? In 5 years, in 10 years, what journey could you go on with this? And so we're looking at our services right now. The way that the bit of our business, I suppose, that is a big bit of our business that a lot of people don't see, is the maintenance of the plants. So every time we install a new project, we then stay looking after those plants, like I mentioned, for 3 years, or hopefully a lot longer than that. If we maintain that client, could be 20 years. And technicians go out and take care of those plants on a regular basis, watering, feeding, pruning. And that was the first focus that we had. What does our mileage look like here, and what can we do? And so we had some fantastic opportunities to really save on travel, and to really sort of look at what we were doing, how we could do it better. So the first thing we did was to start to introduce walking technicians. So whilst in the past, all of our technicians would have a van and go out and do their rounds and take care of all their clients, and then they'd maybe come back to base, load up with all the additional plants they needed to replace anything that's dead or dying. And by having a walking technician, you eliminate all of that straight off the bat. So we actually have now got 10 out of our 54 technicians. We've got 10 who are walking technicians. So that means that we've eliminated those vans and that mileage, and we've also opened up that opportunity for people who don't want to drive. So I think it's not a case of a lot of people feel that driving in London is extremely challenging for us.
I don't like it.
No, right? It's not a pleasant experience. Well, some people some people are absolutely fine with that. But other people, it's really challenging, and it's very stressful. So driving and parking and all of that stuff, just not a barrier anymore. Then the other thing that we introduced was a shuttle. So for the driving technicians, rather than them needing to come back to base to get their planting supplies, the planting supply shuttle would meet them. So again, like that has eliminated over 1 year, 17,000 miles.
Amazing.
Which is, it is amazing. I think we should be really celebrating that internally, small changes, but are making a huge impact. So so that was the first thing we did. The other thing that we looked at was to really sort of look at our supply chain, and wherever possible to make our supply chain greener. There's going to be so many more things we can do in the future, but you have to kind of work with what you've got where you are, don't you? I think that's the starting point, right? Is what can I do? What can we do? Where are we? And what's available to us? And then obviously making plans further down the line to be able to push further down our supply chain, maybe working with other planting companies. Who knows if that's going to be an option? So we can all say collectively, wouldn't it be better if this? And then we can go out to our suppliers collectively and say, we want this. And kind of demand the change from further down the line. But that's something for the future. But in terms of supply chain, looking at where we could get plants from the UK. So with planting, about 40 years ago or so, the Dutch market for growing plants became like the powerhouse, really. And the Dutch government subsidised that. So really, they kind of got that sewn up as being, we couldn't compete with them in the UK for that. But there are still some UK growers. So for exterior planting and for orchids, we source those from the UK, and that's great. We also find that UK grown exterior planting is hardier and longer lasting because
Yeah.
it's already acclimatized to the
It's native, isn't it?
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we've also really strengthened up on our just-in-time ordering, so there's less wastage. But
Yeah.
wherever there is any excess planting, then we will have really clever ways of doing things with that as well. So gifting to our locality, allowing staff to take those things, and also our local community as well. And then pots, so we would recycle our pots as well. And we've also got some brilliant innovations for planters, which we know our clients love. So, for example, things that are made from completely carbon net zero production, made purely by wind energy, and made from recycled plastics, from recycled cork, and from marine recycled plastic, so that we've got things to offer our clients, options
That's
to
really
offer
good.
them for
Yeah.
sustainable, recyclable products. I mean, there's so many things that you can do, aren't there? And I think you kind of have to stick to the things that you can do and repeat over and over again. I mean, internally, in-house, we've got some great practices too. We capture rainwater to water
Yeah.
our plant stocks with here. And peat is a bit of an issue in the horticultural industry. I don't know if this is something that you're aware of.
No,
But
I'm not too aware of this.
okay,
No.
so peat extraction
Yeah.
is a cause of CO2 release.
Okay.
And in the horticultural industry, generally, peat has been widely used because it's such a brilliant substrate, so full of nutrients. Plants love it. Plants really flourish when they're planted with peat. But
Yeah.
the government has banned its use, so completely banned in the horticultural industry from 2026.
Oh,
So
right.
to get
Okay.
right ahead of the curve, we stopped using peat planting. So we use peat-free substrates. We've also got a new kind of substrate that we use, which is completely soil-free, so not just peat-free, but it's like compost-free as well. And that eliminates pests. So it's very lightweight. It's called
Okay.
ecoponics. So you can actually grow plants in that instead of soil. And it uses less water.
Okay.
So it's a great alternative.
And that doesn't affect the plants in terms of their hardiness
No,
or
no,
whatever they
no.
need. Oh, okay.
It's a great alternative to planting. Plants can do really well in it.
Okay. Because I can't remember the substrate. Is it Leica, which is like a lightweight soil substrate, which we obviously when we do terraces and
That's
roof.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Leica is like a clay type of
Yeah.
substrate. So yeah, ecoponics is more of a volcanic substrate. So like volcanic
Okay.
porous, almost a bit like pumice type of thing. So similar, but better at holding nutrients.
Okay. That's really
Mm.
interesting. So in that sense, obviously, I wasn't aware that he was being banned. Do you think that external policy is helpful in that sense to drive
Oh,
innovation?
definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Until these
Mm.
things happen, like for example, would we have got to this place so quickly, looking at walking technicians, looking at other important ways of changing what we do prior to sustainability being a driver?
Yeah.
Maybe not. I mean, yes, we are looking at our operations. We have a fantastic operations manager who's come in and shaken things up and talked about
Yeah.
streamlining processes. But would we have gone to that point first? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's chicken and egg, I guess, isn't it? But the more you're pushed on things, the more what's the word? Adapt or,
Yeah.
adapt or die,
It is.
isn't
It is
it?
that. It is. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Biogazetters have been on our journey ourselves. We've recently become B Corp. We've also signed up to science-based targets, and over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of work within our in-house team, and it's opened our eyes to how we have looked at things from us as a business. I mean, we obviously champion sustainability in all of our projects, but we realized when we were moving into our new office that actually we probably need to showcase that by reflecting that into our office design, but also how we operate as a business. So for us, it's been about, how do we as an office come to work? What are we using? Are we using gas to heat our spaces? Are we going all electric? It's been thinking about our own supply chain. So whether, where's our energy coming from? So we're going to green tariffs. We've been challenging where we get those lovely biscuits that we need for those meetings, even, to the nth degree of that. And obviously working with a company like yourself for our plants, we know that you're pushing yourselves as a company. So it's sort of a to and fro, isn't it?
It really is. And I think that we as ourselves, as we're always in someone else's supply chain, right? That's by the pure nature of what we do, providing those services, providing those products. And we know how important it is for our clients that they can measure us, and that they can clearly see where we can support them actually with their own ESG policies, and then which part we're playing in wellness and in supporting their staff, and what we do is important as a product, as a service, but actually also then in the supply chain, where's the visibility on what we're doing? So we, as part of our strategy, we've got on board with Carbonology, who are a consultant on the whole greenhouse gas side of things, so that we can get the carbon verification. I think it's ISO 14641, I think. So we're working on that. I think we'll probably have that done by Q2 of next year. Yeah, so I think it is so important, isn't it? And the other thing that we're going to be working on as well is EcoVadis. I don't know if that's something that you do.
No, I've not heard about that.
All right, so EcoVadis is, because we are in so many people's supply chains, we're constantly having to complete supplier questionnaires on our sustainability, strategy, and on particular items which are going to be important for that client. So we need to make sure that we're answering all the questions. EcoVadis is a platform that allows you to gain an EcoVadis rating. So for all your sustainability efforts on different areas, you can plug it all into the system, and it allows you to have a rating, and sometimes also a badge. You can get like gold or bronze, or depending on how well you're doing. But it just gives that ability for clients to measure you against other suppliers, and also to get a good idea very quickly on how you might meet their criteria and which areas maybe you're not doing so well at.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, we as a company have to fill out various pro formas and other bits and pieces to prove our competency and compliance on lots of things. But yeah, sustainability, I think, is a big thing where the industry is working hard to move in the right direction. Policy, as you said, has forced people's hands. I've said a few times on the podcast that you've always had two camps with developers, where some have been proactive and some have not really wanted to engage, but they had to engage in the last couple of years, because every single company, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, everyone's got their own ESG targets. And if you as a commercial office space or retail space, whatever it might be, are not able to provide that, they're going to go elsewhere.
Absolutely.
So I think, you can do that.
And I also think that sustainability is quite a big, scary beast, especially if you're a small company and you feel like your day-to-day operations are taking priority and everyone's busy, and then that you should be doing this and you should be doing that, but you don't actually know what you should be doing. I think the more that companies can share best practice without hiding away behind that, so that their competition doesn't, steal their idea, the more we have to be doing this from the right place, don't we? Like, we have to be doing this because we actually want a better outcome for the planet and we want
Absolutely.
a better outcome for our sector. We want to be helping people in the workplace sector to be greener and more sustainable and have better practices. The more we can share what we're doing, we all win.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think there are so many different things you can do in sustainability. There are so many different net frameworks and platforms. And are you B Corp, or are you doing EcoVadis? Like, there are so many things that actually, until you start discussing it, until there are more workshops in our sector to help people to understand which bits might suit them, I just think we definitely need to do more work on that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because that's a perfect segue to my final question
Oh,
for you. I mean, you may have touched it. I mean, I don't know if that's your answer, but it's a question I ask every one of my guests, and I get a fantastic array of answers, from, using renewables to policy to everything. So my final question for you is, if money was no object, what's the one thing that you would, you know, click your fingers and change that could tackle climate
oh
change?
gosh. Do you know what? I'm going to go back to that needing to make change from where you are.
Yeah.
And I don't just want to say one thing. I think there are a couple of things.
Yeah.
So from a personal level, I think avoiding fast fashion and buying less but better quality.
Yeah.
And I think from a kind of UK perspective, I think we really need to wrap our arms around our farming community. I think we seriously, with climate change the way it is, with the scary things that are happening just literally a stone's throw away in Spain, in France, I think
Yeah.
we need to really look at food security in our own country. We need to protect our farmers and our farms and encourage more growing of food in the UK so that we can, really make the most of what we have actually, which is a kind of great climate, a safe country,
Yeah.
and a population that we can help to support with the cost of living. And then wider from that, I think planning of cities, properly planning cities so that we
Properly.
aren't just building everywhere, but that we're actually long term making really good choices for maybe more resi-commercial type living,
Yeah.
affordable living, and good transport links.
Yeah. I
There's a
love all
lot,
of those answers. There's a lot of that.
but I
Think,
do feel passionately about those things.
No, I think it's those all hit very true to me. I mean, going the opposite way of your answer. So the sort of going high level down. I mean, I think we as an industry, in the construction industry, the built environment industry, even, I think there's so many stakeholders, and we need to do that. Just down the road from my flat, there's an incredibly large block of flats going up. And I know that, in the UK, we need lots of residential houses. I often do question, are we building them in the right sustainable way, and not just whacking a whole bunch of flats on top of each other? Is that sustainable from a energy perspective? You mentioned farming. Are we doing the right types of farming that is sustainable, that is going to provide the longevity that we need as a country, and of course wider? The market is become global now. There's UK products that go elsewhere, and there's products that,
And it shouldn't really be like that.
yeah,
I can remember when they were talking about importing milk from Australia. I'm like, this is a
yeah,
madness. What
it's
is
ridiculous,
going
isn't it?
on? It's just
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, and I think it is changing. I mean, you mentioned fast fashion, and I think that's really true. Like, I think when I was younger, I definitely was a culprit of fast
Mm.
fashion, but I think it is spending money wisely,
Mm.
and I think that can apply to anything, can't it? It's spending your money wisely on something that will last a bit longer, and that in turn will help us, rather than buying, 5 t-shirts from company X, you might be able to actually buy one that's actually will last 5 years.
And also, I don't think we should beat ourselves up about what we did 5 years ago,
Yeah.
6 years ago. We
Yeah.
didn't know better. When you know
No,
better, then you
exactly.
do better. And
Yeah.
things have changed, haven't they? And our mindsets have changed, thankfully, because there's more people working in this area.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you're seeing it more, aren't you, in terms of, what's great is I think 5 years ago, even in the clothing sort of sector, you wouldn't have like an eco label. I mean, I think it's changing. Some companies have really made an effort with the cotton. They're trying to source it much sustainably, and that they're pushing that through their entire range. Or some have got, okay, we've got an eco range, and they're going to scale it up. And I really like the point that you made earlier on, where every single one of us is on a sustainability journey. And I think one thing that I have found is there's a bit of the bashing happening where they're saying, oh, you're not doing enough. And I think that's quite unfair. I think every single company is on a journey, and their individual journey. Sometimes it's not very easy to just click your fingers and do it, whether it may need too much financial investment to make that happen, or it's taking the steps and making sure that the company is able to sustainably grow in the right way. You mentioned that you as a company, you've taken one or two things, you've made sure that you explored it, researched it, invested in it, because obviously it takes financial capital to make a move, like walking technicians or having your shuttle van to move the plants around and all the equipment. That's an investment, and you can't do that and all 10 the other things. You as a company, you've probably got another 10 ideas that you'd like to implement, but you've got to make sure that if you've got one idea like the walking technicians, you're gonna spend some money, you're gonna put the effort in, you get the right people in, make sure that works, and then you go, okay, great, this has saved us X things, and then we're going to move on to the next idea. And you've got a roadmap, haven't you? And I think often it's a shame that we sort of bash each other to go, oh, you haven't done enough. Well, I think it takes time, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that is the thing with sustainability generally, and this is why we have still got such an issue in this country, is that we don't do enough long-termism. We don't do enough plan, stick to it. There's too much changing of government, and then this idea is out, and then this idea is in, and then it's all a local scale, and it's not national, and it's not thought through. And that's the piece that's really missing, is that when we have these great ideas and these strategies, is that we stick with it.
Yeah.
It's like a good marriage.
That's
when
great.
they go and get tough, you can't walk away. You have to work through, and then you really reap the rewards.
No, I think that's a perfect point to stop. Now, I really like that. We've done a lot longer than I expected, so thank you very much. I like the fact that it wasn't just about plants. I think we sort of hit a lot of other sectors.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed understanding a little bit about sort of the back of house and logistics. And I think that's something that I hope, my listeners will enjoy and appreciate.
I hope so, Pradumn.
We should be thinking about the back of house things, that if we can target all of the areas in each of our companies, I think that's where we're going to see a shift.
I think so. And it's really nice as well to have the opportunity to come and talk to you, because I do think sometimes that planting is the poor cousin. I think, it's a generally quite a low cost element of the workplace. And it's the furniture companies and other sort of design elements tend to get more airtime, and we have so much to say and so much to offer that it's really lovely to have the opportunity to come and chat with you.
No, thank you very much for making the time today. And thank you all very much for listening today. Do like, share and subscribe, and watch this space for the next episode. So thank you again, Katie.
Thank you.